At Big South Media Day in Charlotte with Mike Pacheco, I'm Dave Friedman, joined by Paul Biancardi from ESPN. The Big South last year, very, very competitive. Winthrop played in that overtime game in the Big South semifinals, then the championship game against Campbell. You saw those games. Xavier Cooks is back for the Eagles. Now, Keon Johnson is gone. How do you see this Winthrop team?
Well, obviously young in the backcourt. They have an Australian coming in and a junior college player in the backcourt. But when you have a go-to guy who can get you a bucket or a rebound in Xavier Cooks, you always have a chance to win the league, especially in a league where there's not a lot of high major players per se. Xavier Cooks obviously is playing himself to a high major level type talent now, but he's a guy that you can go to get a bucket, get a rebound, block a shot, and you get one of those guys and you always have a chance in March.
You specialize in talent evaluation, a lot of prep stuff, high school players. When you look at Xavier Cooks, what are the pluses and minuses in his game?
Well, I like his skill set for his size. I mean, that's where the game is going. They're looking for big players with versatility. He can shoot it a little bit. He can drive it. I think he has a really good back-to-the-basket game and excellent footwork. And he's a pretty good athlete. And he gives you a little bit of everything. So that's where the game is going versatility-wise. Now, he has to get stronger, and I think he has to play with more intensity for longer stretches.
Big South has talked a lot, Paul, about adding resources and trying to do everything they can for the student athlete experience. But coaching plays a huge role in winning as well. And you've seen what Nick does at Asheville and Pat Kelsey at Winthrop. What have you seen from the coaches in the Big South over the last couple of years?
Well, it's funny you do ask me that, Mike. I was thinking about that just before the red light came on. This is a great coaching league. Richie McKay, was at Virginia, was a head coach prior at stops at Oregon State, was the head coach at Liberty at one time. You got Tim Kraft at Gardner-Webb and Dustin Kearns now at Presbyterian. And there's so many good coaches in this league that it has become somewhat of a mid-major coaching league where guys that have been here for a while do a good job, and some of them, in Pat Kelsey's case, has stayed. He had a chance maybe to go to UMass. He was there for a cup of coffee and came back. But this is a really top-notch coaching league, and I think that adds to the value of the game and the players and the recruiting.
One change in coaching maybe over the last couple of years has been the plucking of mid-major players by the Power Five. So not only are you recruiting high school players, but sometimes you're recruiting your own players.
You're recruiting your own players a lot. In fact, you're doing that every day. And no better example than I think Nick McDevitt at UNC Asheville. He's had tremendous talent, and he's been in the championship game, has won the championship game, and his players have got plucked by schools like Louisville and Arizona. That's a credit to him and his staff on how well they evaluate, on how much they develop those guys in a short amount of time. But then unfortunately, those guys are looking for brighter lights in the game, and people are telling them things to go other places. And I'm not sure it's always the best move to go to the brighter light. Sometimes stay where you are, you're happy, and you're the man. The teams are playing through you. But that's been a problem not only in the Big South, but I think in other mid-major conferences. When I was coaching back at Boston College in the 90s, the late 90s, our guys would transfer down to a Boston University or Northeastern. Yeah. Now guys are transferring up, so the cycle has changed.
You mentioned Arizona, and Sean Miller's program is one that is involved in this FBI investigation. What does this mean to the landscape of college basketball?
It means a lot of things. First of all, I think in some ways I felt relieved when I heard the FBI was involved, because the first thing I thought about is we're going to get the truth. The NCAA, they're a powerless organization. They try to do the right thing and get the right information, but with no power of subpoena and the ability not to put people in jail for perjury. So they don't always come up with the truth, but they get things that are truthful, but they don't get all the facts right, and it's impossible to do so. And people have the right to refuse to talk to the NCAA. That's not the case, as we know, with the FBI. So for me personally, as a coach and a media personality, I'm excited to find out the truth. And I say the word excited because once we get the truth, then maybe we can move on, maybe make some changes in the game that are positive for the game, and I think the game will grow from this. It's a dark cloud now, but I do see a rainbow at the end of this.
Anything specifically you're looking forward to this year?
I always love the freshmen because, as you mentioned, I like to evaluate talent. I get to see the best high school players in the country. So for me, to see the freshmen come into the game and make an impact on the game is exciting. And we got some of the best freshmen that I've seen in almost a decade, with Marvin Bagley III at Duke. I went to their practice yesterday at Duke, and he's as good as advertised. He's 6'11" and can affect the game in the post and on the perimeter. And then Michael Porter Jr. at 6'10", I mean, he's an unbelievable NBA three-point shooter. DeAndre Ayton out at Arizona, just a 7-footer who's so physically imposing. So when you look at next year's draft in 2018, I hate to skip ahead, but we're looking at guys that are 6'10", 6'11", and a 7-footer. So they come into the college game, we get them for 1 year, and then we give them to the NBA, which probably leads me to asking you, what's your thoughts on the one-and-done rule?
Oh, that's a great question. I like the hockey model where you can draft a player and then you have the rights to them, but if they want to go to college, Kyle Kalander, Mike, the commissioner of the Big South Conference, talked about the baseball model.
Yeah, and that makes sense too. Either you come out right away, or once you come in, you got to stay in for, in this case, 3 years.
Yeah, I love that. I let the kids that want to go right to the pros, and if they don't make the NBA in the draft, they'll end up in the G League, but they forfeited their opportunity to go to college. And if you come into the college game, unpack your bags and stay a while.
Well, and the one thing I would add too, with kind of combining the baseball model, is if you go come right out, put it in the contract that the team that drafts you has to pay your college. If things don't work out, you still get a chance at an education.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of answers to this question. I don't like the one-and-done model for college basketball because the guys come in so quick and then they leave so quick, and we never get a chance to really see them. The fans don't get a chance to really know their players. So that baseball model to me is probably
Plus 3 years
the
of
best.
college, Paul. I mean, I went to a 4-year school, did it in 4 years. I wouldn't have traded those 4 years for anything. Except for $20 million.
That's why I let them go if they think they're ready to go.
Paul Biancardi is a first-round draft pick for us, but we're afraid he might declare and leave early. From Big South Media Day, Mike Pacheco, Paul Biancardi, I'm Dave Friedman.